Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
The presumption is that all our viewers are doing well. My name is Tumuhimbise. Today, the 24th day of November 2025. We are here once again in our hotline show with two gentlemen, opinion leaders, and of course they have various responsibilities from where they come. And previously we missed Honorable Awich Pollar, but nonetheless we had Mr. Joseph Ochieno, who I don't want to say that he represented the ideas of Honorable Awich Pollar, but when it comes to the elderly point of view with how they see things, maybe not the other he did. And I think just because we are running out of time, we have started late and we must apologize. I want to begin with Honorable Awich Pollar to say hello and straight away run to summarize how his week has been. And most likely he may not share with us why he wasn't with us previously, but who knows, he may. Maybe he was trying to continue strengthening their campaign of protecting the gains and or convincing other people to protect the gains. So Honorable Pollar, say hello to our viewers, the viewers of the Hotline Show, and then we shall proceed, sir.
Greetings and good evening to our viewers. As usual, it's good to be here.
Thank you.
And I take it like an addiction because I like to share my views with my colleague, the Congress, and of course, your good self and the viewers. So it's nice to be here, but sometimes it's challenging. You have some commitment, like our party chairman has been in the East. All of a sudden, you are called to the East, and you have to leave to go there. Like now he's in the Western, anytime can be summoned to Kisoro. So sometimes it's unavoidable. But otherwise, the week as usual has been very uneventful. We ran normal routine in offices, and where meetings were held outside, we had to hold it and then keep the East. We have swept the East now up to River Nile. We, however, jumped from River Nile. Now we are jumping central. We are starting from the far south, and then that is in our NRM structure where we have SEC, Western Region. It comes from Kisoro to Karoma again, from Kisoro to River Nile. That is again Western. So we are going to start from there again up to there, then we come to Central in Buganda. So as I always say, if the week has been uneventful, and then no news is good news. Because don't ever rush for news, because bad news travels faster than good news. Possibly one of the two things that happened in the week is that we had a discussion for the memory of Benjamin Mkapa, of the President of Tanzania. It was so good. He was such a good leader, and we tried to say we should emulate him. It was in Sheraton, organized by Cavendish University. But we also received at the party headquarters a delegation of African Union, advanced team, a call assessment team, to assess how they will deploy for the observation of elections.
Okay.
So I was with the African the observation team, advanced team at the party headquarters. We discussed, they had a lot of questions because they have a checklist to check if the ground is level. We tried to explain to them how we think the ground is level, and as a country also tried to tell them where we have challenges. So we assured them that we shall have a peaceful election, and they are going to deploy a election observer team. So that was my week. We are going to start today, but I must mention that I love this place I've come, but even tonight I have a meeting, but I have to come here, and I will push as much as I can while checking on my colleagues. When the meeting starts, then we shall see how we do it. But I thought it's better to be here and then do it later.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Awich. So Joseph Ochieno, how has your week been? And you could say hello to the viewers, and then of course I will tell the viewers whose seat the other, whose seat that is, and then as we await him also.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, partly as Comrade Awich says, and as you gracefully introduced us, although you decided to call us old men,
Baganda have this saying of Edisorio Mukulu, like, and I know you know.
You didn't call us elders,
elders. Oh dear, sorry, I meant the, opinion leaders.
But yeah, it's good to be where
But
we are.
Congress, I'm happy to be an old man.
To be,
Can I steal your minute? I am happy
to be an old man.
to be an old man. Now, if somebody thinks being told old is an insult, and is a young man, then let him pick a rope and hang himself. Because he's also going to be old.
Yeah, in any case.
Oh, can we now say our friends...
And by the way, it's not even guaranteed, because you can also die at a tender age without even
can we now say
age.
those of our friends who died when we were in S5 or at the university, they were lucky because they died without being old.
No,
so those of us who are lucky, then it is no.
It's an advantage
Please,
to be told an old man.
Viewers, if you are old, you are lucky. Why? I have dodged bullets in the front line. I have dodged motor accidents. I have dodged border. I have dodged malaria. I have dodged everything to reach where I am. And you young man, will you reach mine?
You can't be
Tomorrow
sure.
you'll just carelessly fall on the road and the border will knock you. How about me who has dodged bullets, guns, been lucky to survive plane crashes and motor accidents, dodge this, and I'm here.
Okay.
So if you think old is bad, then pick a rope and hang yourself so that you don't reach being old.
Old is good.
No, you die before you commit suicide. Said me this old thing I don't want, let me pick a rope and hang myself.
Yes, Mr. Ochieno.
Comrade Awich, that's a message for the young viewers.
Yeah, sure.
You guys, you took me too early. No, and I would have had a tongue in the cheek from a joking perspective, because I was going to emphasize that it's true, that I'm delighted that you recognize that we're basically elders in this game, and that I hope that in so doing, you and your viewers recognize that we come from a perspective of granted privilege of knowledge and access and networks, but most importantly also a huge amount of privilege in terms of experience. Even as I was coming to the studios, you talk about our weeks, I was looking back to some of my various activities around the electoral processes, and then thinking that, come to think of it, I was around in 1980, I keep on referring to that, during those elections, but also around during Idi Amin's time, and I was also around as Amin's regime was collapsing, and I was in Mwiri as it actually collapsed, when terrace school was not yet the school it is these days. But what that gives is that a perspective that compels me to treasure this country more, to treasure life and context more, but to emphasize that it is urgent that the youth of this country, particularly those, if they take for granted what is at stake around us, that they need to take it very seriously, that eternally to slip off, we might lose the focus, because the world is moving on very, very fast. I was having a conversation with a professor with whom I had lunch today, and we were discussing just that, how the rest of the world was and is today, and that whatever it is, Comrade Awich and I, who cross the town from one end of Kampala to come this end every Monday evening, we are committed to it because we hope that we are making a tiny little contribution to a delight.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Ochieno. Our viewers, our topical discussion today is to interrogate on whether or not the Uganda Police and other security agencies are professional or otherwise. And of course, on our extreme end, we continue to hope that we shall be joined by Superintendent of Police Gilbert Nyaika. He's the Community Liaison Officer at Katwe Police Division. He communicated minutes ago that he is on his way. We continue to pray that he indeed arrives, because for some reason he's more, he's more positioned to answer some of the concerns that our viewers have and or what we may have on table. But nonetheless, that does not bar us from continuing with the discussion as he comes in. I want to ask Honorable Awich Pollar on how he sees things. But I don't know whether my technical team is ready with some footage, and maybe that is what would guide us, if we could refer to some of the footage in Kawempe, and then Honorable Awich Pollar would, in reference to what we are watching as a courtesy, as the courtesy footage, then he can share his opinion on whether police isn't portraying the partisan way of executing work. Honorable Pollar, what's your view? As you can see, that is, you know, the last time you were here, you remember, in fact, even Mr. Ochieno and the rest of the colleagues we had here in present were like, so far, fair, but we can't ascertain that anything can happen in just a minute. Do you still maintain the position that Uganda Police is non-partisan and professional?
Yes, it is. It is non-partisan.
You're going to call them more isolated?
It is non-partisan and professional. First of all, let me start, like I said, the African Union Observer Team were here. Now, the African Observer Team bases their observation on the African Union guiding principles, which were passed in Durban. I think passed till then during OAU, because AU inherited the transition from OAU to AU. Now, these principles are passed by head of states. And as Uganda, we are lucky that we have had a president who has been in the chair for long. So he practically participated in the passing of those guidelines. And therefore, if, for example, it was passed during another presidency, you'd say that president was wrong. But this was passed by
The
our
very person.
president. So it is our guidelines. It is our document. We own it. Therefore, a level ground which calls for a professional and non-partisan police is our own demand. It is not an imposition on us. It is not being forced on us by foreign government or by opposition. It is a demand of the country, where the country passed, even in domestic legislations, they are spread all over the electoral laws. Fair participation, non-partisan by state agents, it is there everywhere. So what is passed in Durban in South Africa is simply a codification of what we already practice, our things. Therefore, it calls for the police to be non-partisan. Now, the police on training, they're trained to be non-partisan. Even on graduation,
The same.
they graduate with a swear or an oath
To be
to the
non-partisan.
Constitution. They graduate with an oath to the Constitution. And they are always guided by the law. Now, I think what happens now is practical challenge, especially in crowd control. They are trained in crowd control. And by the way, a course content of a police training school is human rights. And this is a demand by United Nations. And United Nations ask government, do you put human rights training in this armed forces? And it is put in the army, it is put in the police, it is put in all these organizations. So these guys are trained with human rights. And the police is also aware that there's a law called Human Rights Enforcement Act, which act says, should you policeman go in enforcement of the law and you violate a right, you will be taken
responsible
on personally. In the past, we used to have a defense called a defense of the Attorney General. That me, I was doing my work. If I broke somebody's leg, please sue Attorney General. Not the case anymore. So the police, for us to assess whether they are professional or non-partisan, we need to be guided by those things. One, the principles the government is bound in. Two, the laws available. Three, their nature of training. What is the course content? And now for the crowd control. Crowd control has been a challenge. Whenever they want to control the crowd, for example, telling the crowd that you walk like this, or telling the crowd you use the other ground, don't use this ground, that has been a challenge. Either the crowd seems to think they are being bad unfairly, or sometimes when people are in a group, the group psychology changes. I don't know whether you have realized that when a group of people board a bus or a lorry, they tend to sing. From nowhere they're singing. That is what is called group psychology. You said, but this man was out, he was not singing. Now once he's in a bus, he starts singing, or in a lorry, he starts singing. So that is group psychology. So group psychology also impedes, and this is where now police tends to get in conflict with the crowd in the process of crowd control, or even in the process of crime management. Because once a person in a political organization commits a crime and is a suspect, when you go for such a person, people now find it difficult to differentiate between, are you following him as a political person, say of FDC,
or rather criminal,
or you are actually following the criminal? The line now becomes so thin, and this is what brings a confusion of whether or not police is partisan or not. But I believe and I know that the police as it is now are very professional police, and they are non-partisan.
Would you would you take it on to say, in your view rather, that they are overwhelmed? Are they, like, they aren't enough? What is it that causes all this that now we see? Because inter alia, when you were here, we all agreed. I think I think then we had either Professor Rogers, if I'm not mistaken, and all the panelists were like, at least so far. But But again, they had they had some exception and said, no. Until then, we cannot say that they want to, they will continue to behave the way they do. Because also some time ago we had closer to the same incident in Isinjiro. So now it's coming back. So what could be the problem in itself?
I will go to your initial question about are they not enough? I think there's a challenge of human personnel resource. Sometimes, especially during election period like this, the police tend to be thin on the ground. I've not followed unknown, but I thought there was recruitment purposely for that, for the election time. But still, they are thin on the ground. And that is why there is a law which says that should they be thin on the ground, they can call on the army to help. And it seems that law, people take it with God. People think that when the police now invite the army to come, actually that is a partisan nature. They think now the army is being on the other side. So you find that it is true the police are thin. Remember our public service recruitment. We talk of independence, but our public service recruitment system being challenged by World Bank, IMF, and all this and all that. So we at no time do we have enough human resource for police as we may wish. And that's why they call in the army. So I like to agree with you. I want to answer your question in the affirmative, that my thinking is that the police sometimes are thin on the ground and they are overwhelmed, and that is why they call in the army to help. Otherwise, if police were enough, that provision of the law which says they should call the police, that provision would be idle and redundant, because at no time would they call the army anyway. So that position would be idle and redundant. But seems like that position of the law is not idle. Quite often they have been invoked. Quite often they have invoked that provision.
Some people have a different argument when it comes to that law where the law allows police to call on the army to give a hand. Given a track record of Mr. Museveni being anti-police, because even when you people captured the power here, police was put on what someone would call Katwe for a year or so, and the late Aronda was manning CPS. As soon as you captured the power, police was disarmed. So isn't it what informs your bias against police as NRA? You never believed in police itself, because that's what the history has. And maybe for some reason, that's why you put that clause that so as long as police is not sure of what is likely to happen, you are free to invite the mighty UPDF.
No, but about whether it emanates from trust of police or not, I think that is explainable. You see, legal notice number 1 of 1986 wrestled power and puts power in the hands of NRM, headed by Museveni.
Yeah.
That was the legal notice that changes government. It was a revolution of its sort. Now, a revolution means, therefore, that you are dismantling the former state system. You are dismantling the army, you are dismantling the police, you are dismantling the state, except where the new revolutionary agree on transitional provisions. Like the transitional provisions of saying, let judiciary proceed, let civil service proceed. So, in fact, the way NRM or NRA dismantled the state system was even in a polite way. For example, the army, when Amin was overthrown, Amin soldiers were taken as war prisoners. Some were taken to Tanzania, others were taken to Luzira, others were taken to Jinja, the police. Jinja, that police near Nightingale. There's a police thing there, and around Nightingale. So all the Min soldiers were taken as war prisoners in the process of dismantling the state. But in the case of NRM, it was decided on a very principled philosophical ground that the former soldiers are not wrong, it was the leaders. Therefore, take them to a political school. Kibura was open in Ibanda. Educate them to a political, it was a political school like Chankwanzi, but for the former soldiers.
After they have graduated, form battalions, let them go back. That's why I was telling you it is a polite way, because instead of making them war prisoners, put them in the army, educate them, put them back in the army. Now for the police were left on duty, but they were disarmed.
Now which duty would they execute?
Yes, they were not removed from the payroll. Ordinarily, in the dismantling of the state system, some people would have even preferred taking them as war prisoners or dismissing them. But they only said, while we politicize and reorganize the soldiers in a political school and making them form new battalions, let us watch the police. After all, the ordinary service person may not be wrong, it is the leadership. So that's why I'm saying, instead of seeing the police that we don't trust them and what, I thought it was a lenient revolutionary approach.
Okay.
It could have been worse. Like I've said, during a Amin's regime, some were taken war prisoners. Here you're saying, no, you are not war prisoners. Be there with a gun, but we have just removed the state power. How do we give you a gun and trust you?
But because you see, about which, before I cross to Mr. Joseph Ochieno, it is quite interesting and hard to explain to people of our generation that you can have people with a military background command and or lead police in different perspectives and directorates, and you can hardly have a police officer even commanding a section of UPDF. But of course, I don't know.
No, but I can answer that briefly.
I have a response.
Police is law and order. The army has a lot of combat technology and combat thing. So the police wouldn't be in the position. But law and order, anybody can do it. Did you know that the IGP of South Africa, they picked a businesswoman, like you go to Chikubo. You go to Chikubo and pick Margaret and say, Margaret, you are the IGP. Yes. South Africa did it. I think the current IGP.
But you're not
picked from Chikubo.
You're not learning from them. For you, pick from UPDF.
So I'm demonstrating that anybody can be.
But not everybody can be
law
UPDF
and
office.
order protection. But not everybody can be in the combat
What?
section. It can't. South Africa picked a woman from Chikubu.
Let's cross to Mr. Ochieno. What do you have to say in response to what he has said?
I've been telling you that this is an NRA regime. And when the police officer lands here, you know,
yeah, sure.
It's a confirmation.
We just need to have.
You guys say Ochieno talks too much.
They are also okay. Some people say that also police is under capture, but maybe you will respond.
No, not under capture. It's NRA police. So when I say that is that's Ochieno viewpoint. No, NRA just said it. That these guys broke the thing and started their own thing. Which actually, I hope you're referring to Idi Amin's, but not the 1979 Liberation War, because that is true that certain soldiers who were suspected to have been close to Idi Amin and part of the command and control systems, some of them were detained, Luzirad, but a number of others were basically merely screened, you know, and reoriented as it would happen. But as far as the police was concerned, no such thing ever happened. And so we now learn very, very critically that 40 years ago, there was indeed a fundamental change, and it was a change from a government, a normal government as you know, to a complete system that believed in nothing else but doing things the NRA way. Comrade Awich seems to suggest that because police officers and the military indeed get formal training, including on human rights, that in itself is an explanation of the reasons why possibly we shouldn't be discussing this topic. No. We are saying that, of course, these guys get the trainings. And in any case,
what happens? What happens to the content they get from?
That, well, if these guys go ahead and get training on crowd control, community policing, public relations, and indeed, in this case, human rights, why do they behave in the manner in which they do, particularly police officers? And I think that's really the point. No, unfortunately, I have been involved with the police, both in Uganda and elsewhere, and I've told this program again and again, and other programs, that I have been involved in demonstrations. I've been involved in organizing, you can call them anti-government protests, you know, in many ways, and I've engaged with the police forces. But also I have been in different countries, both in Africa and elsewhere, including more recently in Kenya, including when Raila was was leading on the cost of living protests, demonstrations. I attended one rally in Kakamega, Comrade Awich, 2 years ago, and it was very interesting that I felt quite impressed by the manner in which you could hardly see, this is massive crowds, but you could hardly see armed police officers. I made reference to the fact that actually really closer to the pavilion was where I saw two police officers who were armed, but at the rest it was basically managing crowds. Yet that said, I changed my opinion and I changed my mind having attended a public event early this year where Museveni and Ruto were in Nyanza, one, and coincidentally having again attended a big event in Nyanza where Ruto and others were. This is the barrio of Raila Odinga. And sort of what I witnessed then, which will be pleased, in terms of how the last two events, in terms of managing crowds and crowds' behavior, the psychology you're talking about, I actually found that in Uganda, for some reason, maybe because of fear of NRA beatings, Ugandan crowds seem to respond quite well. But on the one of, and I'm saying this publicly, on the one of Museveni, Ruto in the January, I actually thought that the Kenyan police authorities did not handle it well, because it was very clearly on the pavilion behind the Musevenis, and so how these guys, how people would come, be allowed to move very close to particular locations. And then after they've already settled there, you've not put demarcations, you begin now to ask them to move back. And it was always a problem. But number two, then more recently at the Raila barrier, and it's still relevant to this conversation, was a situation in which the police literally failed to grant access, including in this case to governors and top diplomats, including myself, in a particular location within the proximity of Ruto as he was coming. And it was actually an amazing thing, you know, find people basically squeezing themselves through. So I thought, well, what lessons is it about the people, is it about the crowds, or is it basically managing these processes? But then that said, in Uganda, the issue, that's not the issue. So you see, I've already given these guys some credit in terms of organization. And I've also given our citizens credit in terms of being able to respond to do's and don'ts. What is at issue is whether or not we have an event, a public rally at Kawempe, or a public rally in Aloy, and incidents happen of whatever nature, and how the police, in this case the security forces, respond. This basically is that. And so if it is the case that how does it happen that police officers handle a particular category of crowds, because we talk about are they professional? If you see what happened in Kawempe, both the police and the army are terribly unprofessional and by the completely unacceptable. If you see how they responded to recent events in Kirihura, it's completely shameful. But then if you also then go ahead and see whether or not the police and other security agents, let's focus on the police, will respond to a crowd where Mr. Museveni is, and a crowd where, say, for instance, Robert Chagulanyi is. It's clearly the case that these are partisan stuff. And it's interesting, Comrade Awich, amazingly, why is it that predominantly at, say, a Museveni rally, where possibly in many cases, not always, but in many cases, the crowds may be bigger in an enthusiastic way than, say, to other opposition leaders, maybe Chagulanyi, for argument's sake, just making an argument, you know? And there are no incidents, and people take direction. It is in part the psychology you talk about, where if the crowd see the police as their national agency, you know, they'll respond in a certain way. So there I agree with you. But if they see the police officers as the other side, and they've come sort of really in a combat mode situation, people react in a different way. In Britain, for which I participated in many demonstrations on the anti-apartheid and racism, sometimes questions of minimum wage, a series of events, where you go to an event and you think, and then some things to do with the deaths of black people in custody, and so you find the crowd will be predominantly African-leaning or blacks or mixed, and then Bazungu, who are predominantly progressive left, who really feel very strongly that the state is against a certain section of their community. The hostility and level of trust and engagement will be usually very different. And I've been there both as a participant and in many cases one of the people who would go in to try and mitigate conflict. So these things are rules, and that's why it's extremely important that the police, and it's unfortunate the police officer is not here, they should conduct themselves in such a manner that they don't show such an apparent partisan manner in which they conduct business with the crowd. I would say here in Uganda, professionalism, neither here nor there, I'll give them 50%, I'm preempting it. But as far as whether or not the police are partisan, the answer in affirmative is a total yes, and the burden of responsibility lies with the existing police authorities. I've met the Inspector General once, this one, the current one, but I've met previous ones and most of the senior commissioners. I've met them and I've told them publicly that no, they have a huge amount of work to do in order to cleanse their names. And I also want to say this, that the police have got a huge goodwill from Ochieno and UPC. I have campaigned Norman. I've campaigned hugely, and I continue to campaign hugely. And Comrade Rutafire, you hear me, we continue to demand that the police forces, get sufficient resources for their numbers, sufficient resources for training, sufficient resources for their welfare, but sufficient resources, including equipment, to make sure that they do what their job is, maintenance of law and order. And then as long as they do that in an open, free, and non-partisan way, they are the force. We recognize that we should support them. But at any time when they carry out themselves and conduct themselves where they basically become partisan, sometimes by commission, but in many cases by omission, and public opinion suggests that they're, in this case, partisan, it's unfortunate, it's unacceptable, and because it's an election moment, the timing is, if you see what happened, including today, the note that I saw from my good friend Andrew Mwenda, almost threatening that NUP supporters, for whatever happened, I don't know the news what happened, I think again in Kawempe today, if true, I don't think we should set ourselves on a tone in which to say that, well, the security force services are there to whip you opposition leaders.
What about the argument, by the president in most cases where he says that you, the opposition, are the ones misleading these young people?
I'm not opposition, I'm UPC.
No. Like okay, generally, like I mean, you,
anybody who's not okay.
You get that you people are the ones who mislead these young people, and therefore your crowds are unruly. For some reason, they are provocative. For some reason, they are hard to trust. For some reason, like you hear, they are unruly. A reason for which they must be managed with, with
iron fist.
Yeah, sure.
He's very lucky that there's no objective campaigning, because such a language coming from a candidate and for an incumbent president or leader who should actually be the...
Second, Mr. Chino, you remember the CDF's speech, which was on record, where he said they are being provoked and they will not accept such provocation. You remember, the CDF was, I think, either they were in Kasenyi passing, passing some officers.
It's unfair,
you remember
it's unacceptable, and it should be discouraged and should be condemned. Because in 2025, this is not the kind of language, it's not the kind of conversation we should be having. And it's definitely not one kind of language and tone that we should be expecting from public figures. But again, back, as I said to Mr. Museveni, as really the parent of the household at this material time, you should recognize that when you preside over all citizens. And so even when you warn with caution. So we expect our people to behave well. But if you break the law, security agencies or the law will take its course. In which case then you recognize that there are people in NRA, and many commonly in the last, in fact, couple of weeks, NRA guys, in terms of their crowds in some of their spaces, have conducted themselves terribly unacceptably, just like any other crowd from other political parties. And the community in a way was also right, that where there's a crowd, and again, as I said, I've been part of it, where there's a crowd, does not matter which political organization, events and situations will rise. They will always be in the odd man out. But that is the one that I've always told police authorities, that is where their training comes. When you face, in this case, an unruly or an angry opposition activist, including one who's provocative, your first job is to manage the situation rather than to escalate it. And that should be a commonsensical part of the training.
Isn't that part of the management by tear gassing them, dispersing them?
I don't think tear gassing tear gassing should be the act of last resort.
How else?
Tear gassing should be the act of last resort. When massively threatened, maybe discharge of firearms possibly up in the air, as you know, use of firearms, against any human person in such a situation, as I said, a future UPC government,
But
no, get me, this is important, a future UPC government would ban the use of live firearms. And where a firearm has been discharged, I know it happens in many democracies, a future UPC government where live firearms has been discharged, there must be a formal police complaints process. So that somebody takes responsibility, whether it's the police authorities, if not the police authorities, what are the circumstances leading to that? You know what? No, man. In 2025, the majority of our citizens are young people. The world is moving far. We need to move away from violence. We need to move towards a knowledge economy. We need to move towards a world in which the alternative way of living is civil, open and progressive and open-minded, and one which is not confrontational. And to do so, leadership must be provided for. And in any case, I'm saying that violence and armed violence should not really be the art of any sensible government, particularly a struggling African economy, African government that is seeking to catch up with the rest of the world.
You see, Mr. Ochieno, there is this for you before I come to Honorable Awich and then go into break. You have, let's say 100,000 citizens.
Yeah.
Let's say.
And I've participated in a rally in which there are those, yes.
Yeah, sure. And you have, let's say, 1,000 or so police officers.
That's an interesting point, yes.
Yeah, tell me how best would you have managed such a crowd in the event that it intends to commit some crime without tear gassing them like they did?
Thank you for raising that. In fact, again, I've told police officers, the numbers game usually is not the case. Because as I said, I have personally led a campaign, a rally, in which there are more than, say, let me use a number, 300 people, because I've managed that. Yes.
Civilized. We don't want to compare them with Ugandan.
No, they will have been predominantly Ugandan. And
what I mean, Honorable Awich, sorry, Honorable Ochieno,
yeah.
like if you were leading some demonstration in the UK, the level of civility amongst the citizens of UK vis-a-vis unemployed young people in Kawempe, like we must be realistic with what is on ground. How do you manage the two?
Thank you for raising that. You have now willingly suggested that the citizens of Kawempe are different from the citizens of UK.
Definitely,
so
yeah.
tomorrow we should not cry to racism. Unfortunately, I've got bad news for you. The first big demonstration that I actually led, 2 demonstrations. Okay, in fact, both of them I did. I deputized 2 demonstrations from Makerere University. One was when the Boers, these apartheid Boers, killed Samora Machel. I've told you in these programs. We led from Makerere into City Square and back, Another one, for which I was again a deputy lead, was one in which when America hit Benghazi, when Gaddafi's child was killed. I was a party to that. And as I said, for the Gaddafi's one, I did it as a matter of principle, because at the time, I have very strong views against Gaddafi, because I know Gaddafi is a terrible dictator, who aided Amin, but of course some Ugandans lose about this thing. So you see what I'm saying? So we've done it here in Uganda, and those ones are actually hundreds and hundreds of genuinely very angry Ugandan students. Unlike these days where young Ugandans don't understand, you need to understand me properly. These things, imperialism versus the others. My generation of youth had very strong views about imperialism, global north and exploitation of Africa and African independence and identity. So we're very, very protective about it. So a crowd from Makerere joined by Chambogo and other spaces at the time, guys were very angry, but we did it without violence. Number 2 was that of Samora Machel. Yes, that was, we believed it was imperialism together with the apartheid, against a liberation struggle, Samora Machel here. Again, you'll find a crowd of very angry people. So that is here in Uganda. Now, if you are saying that the crowd in Kawempe are different from, I was telling the predominant majority of those would normally be African crowds. And then we now need to ask ourselves, what's the conversation? Why is it that those crowds will be different? It's part of what I was trying to tell earlier. The burden of responsibility must now lie with the state. Meaning, I don't think the question is unemployment. The issue is mistrust, you know,
sure.
community policing and tal. But I was trying to build the case, and again I told police authorities that the best way to deal with oh, these guys, we knew they're going to be violent, that is intelligence-led policing.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't preemptively say that we know they're going to be unruly, you begin breaking their legs. No, you in many cases actually mitigate them. Sometimes you put people to help to neutralize that. So if your drive is to support society rather than to manage and to enjoy conflict. Of course, recently this is an important one where I'm told that Mr. Muhoozi discovered that some people, you know, is it alleged, you know, faked bomb incidents in order to make money. So if you're moving away from that. So no, I don't think it's the issue. So you know, as long as there's public opinion where people believe that the police are their police, the army are their army, 100,000 Ugandans marching, say from, gathering, say from Lugogo, and they're coming to Kololo Independence Grounds, and say back and maybe continue to Makere or coming to Kawempe or going to assemble where Pineti was supposed to be chased and things like that and back. There is nothing that stops police officers leading the way, opening the way for them, and basically just supervising together with the people from the Red Cross to and fro and nothing else.
I want
You
to
know,
give you,
if an incident then arises where there is going to be provocation,
use reasonable force.
you know, you call for whatever, and then you deal with it, but you deal for it simply knowing that you must take responsibility.
I want to give you a minute, and then I come to Honorable Awich. There are incidences where, sorry, no, let me rephrase the question. Aren't there incidences where the people in the opposition, for instance, have provoked the police, and if you were in police uniform, you would definitely act with, you know, excessive force?
I don't know in a particular incident, but I'm not saying that they will not have been there. Because as I said again, I've managed crowds. I know crowds do provoke.
Yeah.
And I have been in crowds where police officers, you know, as I said, been like some of this racism thing where maybe an African points at the Mzungu saying, you racist people or something like that. Yeah. But it's your job to remain
because
calm,
you are trained in
calm.
any case.
But they're trained. By the British have been training Ugandan police for ages. Even these NRA ones, the British, you really backed this NRA from the beginning and knew that. So they've been training them. And by the Comrade, as part of my early campaigns in the 80s and 90s and whatever, the British used to be very proud. Oh, we are supporting Ugandan authorities with training because the past was this. We are supporting Uganda's judiciary with this because we want to maintain law and order. Now, where that has gone these days, I don't know what to answer. Okay. So no, that has
no matter the provocation, police ought to.
No, when you're provoked, you are trained to be able to manage that when and how it happens.
Okay. Yeah. Honorable Pollar, gladly you shared a fact that all these colleagues, part of their training modules, they have human rights. What happens to the notice after Cavalier or any other training school as they approach Kampala?
Nothing happens. There are no human rights provisions, national and international, and they know how it is embedded in their work ethics. So they don't hide it away. They have it. They protect it. Only that I have said that the challenge of the physical control and crowd psychology. You remember sometime around Benke Wanoka Street, around that there's this shoe shop is called what? Butter. They killed the police officer there. somebody just threw big stone from up and killed. Yeah. Yeah.
To work,
Yeah,
a young
was
case, I
killed.
remember
So
that.
some of these police officers are killed, and which is really unfortunate. So, to be specific, your question, on training, nothing happens to human rights knowledge that they keep exercising it, but
they
the
use it?
challenge keeps coming up.
Do they use the knowledge?
Yeah.
Do you, okay, when such instances happen, do you, in your capacity as leaders in NRM, do you create time to also make evaluations and say, I think here, even much as we are in power, police has used unreasonable or excessive force?
You see, as a party, we indeed win election and create a social contract between us and the people. And in nearly each government ministry, there's provision which touches in the manifesto. So like say internal affairs, our provision is under governance. We shall provide law and order. We want peace and security, equality. Sometimes you go to the specific, like we shall recruit more police officers. Yeah. We put it in the manifesto. So when we do that, we then leave the appointing authority to look for a competent minister to run those manifestos. Now, if the appointing authority has chosen to put Utafire, for example, to run the manifesto, then we leave it at that. But we keep monitoring, evaluating how we are covering our manifesto. So it is at that level that we now ask the ministry that we have in our manifesto recruitment of police, provision of this, how far have you gone? Then the line minister provides to us. Now on each and specific operational matters like this one, sometimes we have sat as a party and made pronouncement, but that is really to a small degree. The institutional follow-up is to periodically evaluate what is in our manifesto. That line ministry have done it. So the day-to-day operational matters, like police have beaten people, police have done this, we believe that our representative in that ministry, which is a political head of that ministry, should be doing it, should be checking it. And I think time and again you have had pronouncement of Otafire. And being a line minister, he has power to call
What
them to
happens?
order.
Because honestly speaking, if there is one person that for some reason some citizens would thank for his words. Of course, yeah, of late. Yeah, he was at the Uganda Law Society, I do not know. Some people are like, maybe he's also playing some other politics. What happens after he has spoken? Because it's as if to many.
He has lamented.
Yes.
Lamented.
It is, yeah, after he has lamented, as Mr. Ochieno puts it right. What happens? Because why would the entire Minister of Internal Affairs say no police officer has a right to block opposition people from conducting their rallies, and the following day the RPC or the DPC is beating people? So who is more powerful here? The DPC, the minister?
Well, first of all, definitely the minister. Is the
On the
overall
paper.
political head. He's even the boss of the IGP.
Yeah. What happens?
But when he makes such a pronouncement, it is a public pronouncement, but also a guidance, which police do follow. But also, maybe we need to check from the minister and other officers what other correspondences are actually put in writing, because now we are not privy to that. I am sure.
We have media interviews.
I am
but
sure he calls the IGP in order and asks the IGG to follow the chain of command to intervene down, because a minister may not go directly to the DPC. A minister will tell the IGP to put such officers in order. Now, we are now not privy to communications that he has done, which may be there. They need to speak for themselves. So, again, we are not privy to replies that this DPC has brought. For example, if he has questioned the DPC of this place, why did you do this? And then we have not had
the reply. Maybe that is managed at that level. But that is to say that the dynamics around there in maintaining law and order is a complex. Some is to the public, some are not. Like you wouldn't even be sure that a police officer was put on Katwe or a police officer was transferred.
Because of
Now, these are some of the things which are internal that we are not privy. We need to ask them. But I know it happens.
Okay. Our viewers, we are with Honorable Awich Pollar and Mr. Joseph Ochieno in our show, the Hotline Show, which runs from 7 to 9. We continue to have our hopes high so that we can have Superintendent of Police Gilbert Nyaika, who is the Community Liaison Officer for Katwe Police Division. In the event that we have him, I can assure you, he will find his questions. Let's just break and come back shortly.
Okay.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise I'll never give a bribe.
Well, that's a great decision you have made. Me and you now have to spread this message to all our friends. If we all do our part, corruption will be no more.
This message is brought to you by Alternative Digitalk.
The Alternative Digitalk. Real issues, real talk. The Alternative Digitalk. Real issue.
Hi, Rogers. Can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes, it can. Although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of public institutions that fight corruption. At a personal level, we must commit to never giving a bribe.
I promise.
Thank you, our viewers, for keeping it digital. Gladly, we are back with Honorable Awich Pollar and Mr. Joseph Ochieno. Because as you heard from him earlier alone, he has some engagement, and so is Mr. Joseph Ochieno. But of course, that doesn't take away from sharing with, from asking them the way forward. Yes, fine. Police is doing what it is doing. Honorable Awich Pollar continues to say they aren't partisan, they are professional, they are taught human rights, to mention but a few. I will not begin with him. I will begin with Mr. Joseph Ochieno, because before we went into a break, we had Honorable Awich Pollar, and of course he was giving us his stand. Now, Mr. Ochieno, Joseph, I wanted to ask you on whether you would put this misconduct onto the entire force as an institution, or rather individuals.
No, of course, will be that individuals will behave in circumstances. In Kawempe, at the by-elections, you saw a young, decent, very beautiful army officer restraining her.
Yeah, sure.
And that was massively impressive. But as I understand it, and I don't know what the latest you guys got from the fourth estate, that young lady was instead reprimanded. I'm told that she may have lost a job or something like that, but something happened to her. I had been looking forward to meeting her, and not necessarily that we should thank people for basically doing their jobs, but under the circumstances, it was absolutely exceptional. So those are really, under the circumstances, amongst our national heroes and sheroes. Now, so those people will be there in the army, those people will be in the police, those people will be there in the intelligence services. I have had stories and experiences where people, including in the restrictive intelligence services, convey information. I have had, personal experiences where information is conveyed to you on the basis of professionalism from people in the agencies who look at particular situations on the basis of objectivity, and they say no, either not in our names or no, we don't like to see these things happen. In a very amazing way, these things happen, including in Idi Amin's times. Many Ugandans, lest we forget, survived Amin because of course we talk about NRA security, but survived because a number of people in security agencies were able, at their very huge risks, to protect people, particularly from Langa Choli communities and particular individuals in UPCs, and even much later, ordinary innocent Ugandan citizens who were not associated with any political organizations, but because of Amin's shadowness or lack of self-confidence for whatever it is, people mutually suspected or targeted, people provided information. The same has happened under NRA. My own experience, when I was arrested by these guys and I was reporting daily at President's office, I was then at Makerere, Comrade Awich. One time, one of the last times I was reporting to President's office, somebody, a driver, and without prejudice because of this terrible Ugandan identity politics which we must kill, was a driver from a Bantu community, stopped me and actually not stopped me because I was going to President's office, and he was in the Mercedes-Benz black Mercedes, and told me, what are you still doing here? This is a draft paragraph under NRA in my memoirs to be. So there will always be people for various reasons. Fast forward to today. The vast majority of people in security services are generally very decent people. Amazingly, last month on my way here, one of those days where I'd left early in order to arrive early, and the Google Maps, extend the conversation, had taken me the other way via Makerere and the other end of Makerere, and is it that Nakulemi, the Kabaka's place? So I, in error, took a wrong turn at, I think, that road, the flyover was over the clock tower because of a vehicle in front of me. And so when I was coming back to join the Sambe junction, the police officer saw me and actually pulled me. And quite rightly, he did so. So this police officer, senior police officer actually, I think a single star officer, said, "Oh, now what do you do?" Then I told him that actually this is the mistake. That police officer told me that one, I did not protest and I was very decent to him, but at the same time he also recognized me. But most importantly, he said the way the road signage had been put and was wrong, and many people get faulted on that. And then he extended the conversation to say that unfortunately when some of these things are done, Comrade Awich, that there is insufficient consultation. Now again, I've worked in local government. What normally would happen is that local police, because police are responsible for traffic management, get engaged, including usually when the local authorities want to decide, maybe do we make this a one-way turning or things like that. So police determine because that's the expertise. So you see that, look, when these things were being done, we as police officers were not consulted. And these things have actually been terribly done.
They are brought on ground to implement something they weren't part of.
Precisely. But you know what, maybe I don't want to push this too close to the sky. This police officer started telling me of the badness of systems, including the errors in government, the corruption in government, and then the corruption partly in the police services. And he was telling me that I pity you politicians. This is for the record. I pity you politicians. But the guy was insisting these things have got to change. That's an amazing thing. I hope to meet this officer again. What was happening is here. But you here see, this just the other month, a senior police officer who's completely committed to his job. He may have been talking to impress me because he now knew me. But actually, in the entirety of the whole thing, you could actually see this guy at pain. So no, majority of people in security services are decent people. Majority of the people who join the police and the army, they join for the purpose include just pure for national defense. Many of these things would normally be, in my opinion, from the command systems, the command structure.
Okay, I will ask you to
and
give...
link the command structure together with the politics, where the political leaders in terms of political directions, and civil servants normally struggle that the world over. But most civil services where there is political independence and neutrality and institutions work, they almost instruct political parties in government. When they say, no, sir, this is the position, we can't do this thing, you can't do ABCD, political leaders do listen.
Could I ask, give you a minute or two, you give a way forward, and then across to Honorable Awich Pollar, and we'll definitely also give us a way forward, and we shall leave here because
I generally think that this is politics, and this politics that comes from the top. The leadership needs to be provided from State House, from the Republic House, number one. You know, the tone of our conduct in terms of public services and organizations, the culture that we have as a nation state, where there is tolerance and respect for rule of law. And when the ordinary citizen believes that the government is with them, the state is with them, you know, citizens by and large will respond. That is why when there is football, people think it's all of us in together. You see how people sort of rally around to it. So at the moment, in as long as the state presents itself the way it is, where it is almost confirmed that NUP and other opposition will be seen as opposition, and opposition will be seen as a trade which is a terrible trade versus the other. Some of these things will continue. So we basically lack leadership, and we need leadership. So we need leadership that will be able to be speaking on behalf of the people, so that citizens feel that they are not on their own. But likewise, that in these cases we're talking about security services, that is not enough to refer to what Comrade Rich was trying to talk about, that the early ones was Attorney General versus you, but in this case it's about you take responsibility. It is the case that, well, we know powers and orders from above continue to be taken. Finally, there was a major incident in Bukedi, my Tororo, I will not go deep into it, where there was a public, the citizens were beaten up, and I went to meet the regional police commander, and that regional police commander, name withheld, no longer applicable in the particular state. He made it to me very clearly the case that, well, it's almost certainly the case that it was about orders from above.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Awich, you have a minute to give us a way forward, just 1 minute, and then we shall...
The way forward is, one...
Call to action, citizens, and of course, government.
Yeah, the way forward is one that the crowd...
Yeah, it's okay.
Give it to him. The way forward is that...
yeah. The way forward
is that we need we need to involve both parties, the crowd and the police. Both need to check and behave. For example, for a long time, since some leading politicians in this country declared that the way to remove NRM from power is not through the ballot, and that he will not go to election anymore, intelligence kept getting information that there is a tendency or an attempt to have an insurrection. So that is why crowd control within the city will always be very delicate, because I think some people want to use an uprising or insurrection. And therefore, the crowd should make themselves behave to make this suspicion remain hanging. When it remains hanging, the control system becomes tighter, so that laws are followed to remove NRM by election. It's okay if we don't perform well.
So that does that mean your police act out of panic?
Therefore, well, if you are going to have an insurrection, which is a high treason, then the police has to maintain law and order. Therefore, the part of the crowd is that they should be lawful, they should be peaceful and respectful.
and go ahead with their crowd activities. But also on the part of the police, they should be respectful. We have done our research and found that if our opponents, police don't act hard on them, they are not known. We have done research and found that for a week or two, where Bobby Wine doesn't get into conflict with the police, nobody knows where he is.
Now
So
everyone
in
knows
ours,
he's in
police-
Kawempe, he's been in
yes,
Kawempe.
police confrontation work against us. So as a way forward, therefore, we need both respect from the public to
And the
respect the police, and the police to respect the people. And that any further confrontation is to our disadvantage.
Okay.
I just want to say very quickly
Yeah.
that as a way forward, it's extremely important that Comrade Rutafiri, who's is a man who's experienced life and has been part of this for a long time and speaks reasonably once in a while, you know, that he should take the responsibility, because currently as the lead minister, to lead on this. We don't want him to be lamenting. We want him to be taking action. And we don't want these things to end in a situation in which we say we don't know the kind of communication that takes in place. We need action. But at the bottom line is this, that they must be seen, the citizens must know that there are consequences for their action if we are going to maintain rule of law. Likewise, the security services must know that there's consequences in terms of whatever actions they do take. So at any time when the police seem to have crossed the line, or indeed the military, no, they must know that, well, there will be consequences. And if we are demanding consequences, those actions should be taking place. But I can tell you that citizens ordinarily, when they're involved in these things, they know that if they cross the line unreasonably, you know, action will be taken against them.
Okay, our viewers, because of the unforeseen issues, we will cut this short, and of course catch you up tomorrow, where my other colleague will host Commissioner Fred Bamwine, a commissioner in the President's office, to share some other information in regards to the topic of discussion as shared on our poster. Catch you tomorrow, and yeah, we have just had to go shortly.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.